My dad gave it to me for my 73rd.
Wow. Wow. Okay, let's dedicate tonight's shir as well to the neshama of Edward's father, whose yahrzeit was just this week, Rabbi Yehuda ben Chai, right?
Oh, Yehuda, that's my brother's name.
Shama should be in Gan Eden and be a good intercedent for you and your family, for all good with Klal Yisrael. We know how far the sun is from the earth, right? The sun is 99 million miles away. It seems very far.
93.
93, thank you.
Yeah.
How far away is the moon?
240,000 miles.
240,000 miles away. So it sounds very far. However, although it's very far, it's measurable. It's 93, not 94. It's not something which is immeasurable. When we think about Hashem and our closeness with Hashem, if we're really in touch with Hashem, as Hashem is in touch with us, it's easy to question, thinking about all the different things we think about throughout the day, things that are in our mind, things which maybe shouldn't be in our mind. How close are we really with Hashem? Is it the same kind of thing? The moon and the sun, so far away, at least it's measurable. With Hashem, it seems to be something which is seems to be out of touch with it. Is His door really open for us? Are we really close to Him? Is there really a response? So that's the meaning of this upcoming Shabbos, which according to the Abder Rav is the highest Shabbos of the year. Rabbi Bezalel said this Shabbos is called the Shabbos of Vision, not only because we read in the Torah about the vision of the destruction of the temple, but also because Rabbi Bezalel said on this Shabbos, Hashem shows every single Jew a vision of the third Bais Hamikdash. Every single Jew throughout the Shabbos, every moment of Shabbos. When I was a kid, I used to think that when you go to sleep, then your neshama sees the Bais Hamikdash, but that's not what's going on. Every moment of Shabbos, we have this intense hypnotherapy, and we see the third Bais Hamikdash throughout the entire Shabbos. So what's the meaning of seeing the third Bais Hamikdash? Does anyone remember seeing it last year or the year before? Did you see the third Bais Hamikdash on the Shabbos Chazain? Maybe tzaddikim see it. But can we really say we are seeing the third Bais Hamikdash? What does it mean to see the third Bais Hamikdash? Do we really see it? So there's a similar question that's asked about the voice that comes out of Mount Sinai. It says in the Talmud that every day there's a voice coming out Mount Sinai. The voice says everyone should come closer to Hashem, everyone should return. And the question again is, who hears this voice? So Baal Shem Tov says that only part of your soul is in your body. Part of your soul is in your body, the rest of your soul is in heaven. And when the weather is clear between Gan Eden and this world, when there's a good connection, you have a good Wi-Fi between here and Gan Eden. So when your soul in heaven hears God say, "Come closer to me, return to me," so that trickles down into your soul and your body. And that makes your soul and your body feel, just suddenly you feel out of nowhere, I want to be closer. I want to do another mitzvah. I want to learn more Torah. It's something which happens automatically because of what your soul in Gan Eden, your soul in heaven, hears the voice of Hashem. A friend of mine, he's a rabbi, and he was running this synagogue, and there's a guy in the synagogue who was married to someone who wasn't Jewish, and he was really trying to get through to this guy, and he wasn't successful. And one day, lo and behold, the guy comes to his synagogue, and he says, "Rabbi, can you please help me? I want to put on tefillin." My friend says, "Of course, I'd love to help you put on tefillin." He puts on tefillin, and he notices on the table there's a bottle, empty bottle of Smirnoff, but empty bottle of vodka. So he says, "Rabbi, what's this?" He says, "Well, we have this thing called the farbrengen, chassidic gathering. We get together, we talk soul, we sing, and we had one last night." "Why last night? A special day?" He says, "Yes, it's the anniversary of the passing of the first Rebbe of Chabad, the Alter Rebbe." The guy turns white. He starts to cry. He can't come to himself. Finally, he says this: "I want to go to work today, but I was thinking I should put on tefillin." Then I'm thinking, let's go to work. I think I should put on tefillin. Let's go to work. Put on tefillin. I didn't really want to put on tefillin, and I just ignored the voice. I went to work, but it's kept on gnawing at me. Go put on tefillin today. Go put on tefillin. So I decided, in order to get rid of this voice, I'm just going to go put on tefillin and get it done with so I can go back to work. So I come here, and he said, I want you to know that I am a great-grandson of the Alter Rebbe. And he obviously, that's what touched him. He felt like the Alter Rebbe was, channeling things to his soul and causing his soul to suddenly feel like, I want to be connected. And the Talmud talks about the voice that comes from heaven. Throughout the Talmud, it talks about the voices coming from heaven. There's a word the Torah uses. What is the word the Torah uses when it talks about the voice coming from heaven? A baskel. What's a baskel? David, you hear the baskel? What's a baskel? What's different than a kill and a baskel? A baskel is an echo. When someone talks to you directly, you hear them. You know where the voice is coming from. You could trace it. It's right in front of you. When you hear an echo, you wonder where is the voice coming from. It's not around you. It's coming out of nowhere. So when we feel the sudden inspiration, because our soul in heaven hears God say, "Come closer to me," when we hear that, when you're affected by that, it's like an echo in the sense that you don't know how it started and how it finishes. Just feel the sudden inspiration. So is that what Shabbos Chazain is about? It's actually more. The echo, the voice comes from heaven, is something that comes from God, from heaven. This Shabbos is something that comes from within us, something deeper. How so? Let's look at the mitzvah of Avas Yisrael, the mitzvah of loving your fellow Jew, which is a very pertinent now, as it says the reason the temple was destroyed was because of senseless hatred, and therefore the way to rebuild the temple is with Avas Yisrael, with pure Avas Yisrael, with senseless love, not making any calculation of who should be loved and who shouldn't be loved. So, how can you command someone to love someone? You can command me to eat vegetables. You can command me to eat reptiles. I could force myself to do this. By the way, you know why Adam and Eve weren't Chinese? What would have happened to the snake? It would have been a whole different story. Anyway, so I heard that joke, I think, from a good friend of mine. Yeah, you told me the joke this morning, right? That was a great one. Anyway, so you can't command a feeling. Either you feel or you don't feel. How can you command a feeling? So the answer is, the mitzvah is not to feel. The mitzvah is to think. In the Torah, there are three kinds of letters. There are small letters, average-sized letters, and there are big letters. Previous Rebbe said that a Jew is compared to a Torah. So you also have small letters, average-sized letters, and big letters. You have your virtues, and you have your deficiencies. You have other people in your life, they have their virtues and their deficiencies. So the previous Rebbe said that someone else's virtues should be to you in big letters, and the deficiencies that you notice, they should be to you like they're in small letters. Your own virtues should be in small letters, you should know you have them, but your deficiencies, you should be very conscious of them so that you don't get derailed by them. So the mitzvah of loving your fellow Jew is to think about the virtues of other people. Mendel Futafas, when he was in prison, there were no Jews there, and he wanted to do the mitzvah of loving your fellow like yourself. How could you do the mitzvah of loving your fellow like yourself when there's no one around that qualifies to fulfill this mitzvah? Of course, God says to have mercy on all creatures, but the special commandment of love your fellow like yourself applies to the Jewish people. So, how could he do this mitzvah? He's in prison. So he thought of all of his friends. He thought of the people in his life and how beautiful and how special each of his friends were. And that's how he did the mitzvah of Yisrael. The mitzvah of Yisrael is to think about another person's virtues. That's the mitzvah. So it's not something you have to create. It's something you just have to bring out within yourself by thinking deeply. It's not something that comes from heaven. It's something that you are able to summon from within yourself by thinking about other people. A friend of mine was trying to raise funds for supporting other families, needy families. And he asked one gentleman to support this effort. The guy's like, I don't believe that our people are hungry. I don't believe it. It's impossible. In America, in Europe, nowadays, no one died from hunger in America. It's impossible. No one's really hungry. So my friend, okay, you don't want to help, you don't want to help. A few weeks later, the guy calls my friend. He says, I want to help him. Take whatever you want, Rabbi. Here's my checkbook. Whatever you want, just take it. He says, what happened? He says, I was in a synagogue. At the synagogue, they had a coffee station, and they had milk. And these two little kids come to take milk at the coffee station. But instead of, they weren't taking coffee, they were just taking a whole cup of milk. So I said to one of the children, this is not what this milk is for. This milk is to take a little bit of milk for the coffee. It's not to take a whole cup. If you want a cup of milk, you take it at home. So the boy said, but what do you do if you don't have milk at home? I don't have any milk at home. So it suddenly like dawned on him that it's a real thing. That there's a kid who wants a cup of milk and there's no milk at home. And so when you like think about people who are hungry and you're able to give them your food and make them satisfied, it's just such a heartwarming thing to be able to do, to make another person and to be able to give them in such a way. It changes, if you think about it and it becomes vivid to you, it really changes the whole way you look at kindness and charity, because you could touch it, you could feel it. So that's the mitzvah of Avas Yisrael. The mitzvah is not to feel, the mitzvah is to think about other people, the goodness of other people, and when the other thoughts come in of their deficiencies, to push it away, as Alter Rebbe says, it's pushed away like smoke. So, in a similar way, we all have inside of us a temple. The temple, the third temple. In every Jew, there's a third temple. It's going to be rebuilt in Jerusalem. Yossi, Simon, you already have that. You already have the third temple in Jerusalem. It's in you. It's just that sometimes that temple could be on the back burner, front burner, simmering. It's not always fully with the full fire, the full warmth. So we have to, this Shabbos, Hashem gives us the ability to turn on the fire and to warm it up. What does that mean? The Talmud says in Eicha Rabbah chapter 3, the following three stories. Story number 1. There was a man named Naki who worked in a synagogue. He would light the candles in the synagogue. Before lighting the candles in the synagogue, he lived in Migdol, which is far from Jerusalem, and he would travel from Migdol to Jerusalem on Friday before Shabbat, and he would go through a tunnel to Jerusalem, to the Beit HaMikdash, to the temple, and then he would come back before candlelight. It's the first story. Second story, Talmud says, there was a school teacher. He would prepare his lessons for the week. Before preparing his lessons for the week, he would go in a tunnel to Jerusalem, and he would go to the temple, come back through the tunnel back home, and then when he came home, he would prepare his lessons, and he would arrive before candle lighting on Shabbat. Then there was a group of girls from the city of Tzipori. They wanted to bake challah. Before they baked challah, what did they do? They went to Jerusalem. They went in a tunnel. They went to Beit HaMikdash, and there by the temple, they visited the temple, they came back, and they came home in time to prepare for Shabbat and light candles for Shabbat. What do these stories mean?
It sounds like there's a subway system.
So the question is, there is no subway system in Jerusalem. There are many caves around Jerusalem, but no archaeological finds have discovered any long tunnels like the ones that Talmud describes. So the Maharal, he explains that this passage in the Talmud is meant to be understood metaphorically. When you travel on top of the ground, the Maharal says, your path can get changed because of different circumstances. For example, you could have in your path a mountain. You could have in your path a river. You could have in your path a valley. And because of the various things in your path, they could obstruct you and you have to change things. And it's not so easy to keep on going because of the various obstacles you have. Says the Maharal, what's a mountain? A mountain is a feeling of arrogance. There's a guy, he wrote a long letter to the Rebbe. He was really concerned. He wrote a letter about all the things that was going on in his life, why he's so sad and why things were so hard for him. And he's very excited to get a letter back from the Rebbe. But when he got the letter back, he was very upset. What was the letter he got back from the Rebbe? He got his own letter back from the Rebbe. His own letter. He opened it up and he saw, it's not his own letter back from the Rebbe. The Rebbe actually made some comments in the letter. There's actually one comment. The comment was, I think it was 11 circles. Maybe 7, I don't remember, at least 11 circles. What were the circles? They made circles on the word I. I. In other words, I was telling him that the mountain is getting in his way. He's focused too much, too self-absorbed. Then there's another concept of a pit, of a valley. There's a Jew who was an author in Israel, Adam Baruch, who had his challenges in his Judaism, which began with the following event. He's in a synagogue on Simchas Torah. He's dancing with the Torah. And then the head of the yeshiva, one of the heads of the yeshiva, comes over to him and says, the amount of Torah that you've studied in your life, you've danced enough. Imagine. That really crushed him. You've danced enough, the amount of Torah that you know. You've danced enough. That crushed him. It really crushed him. So he stopped dancing, and not just dancing physically, stop dancing figuratively, stop dancing with the Torah. The Torah was no longer a thing he thought that was relevant to him. He left it.
It's a backhanded comment.
It's a vicious, murderous comment. It killed him, killed his soul. That's another thing that could prevent a person from getting to Jerusalem. It could be a valley. And it could be a river. What's a river? That's in Tanya. The water causes all pleasurable things to grow. Water represents pleasures and lusts and things that we shouldn't be interested in, petty things. So it could be those petty things are derailing you and not letting you focus on what you really care about, what you should care about. So what do? So when you travel above the ground, then you have the mountains, and you have the valleys, and you have the rivers. If you travel in a tunnel under the ground, the Talmud says that Mashiach will come. All the Jewish people will return to the 10 lost tribes, will come back to Israel through tunnels. What's the tunnel, says the Maharal? The tunnel means that you're going to the deepest part of your heart. You're not just focusing on things in the peripheral way, but you're reaching deeper. If you're doing a mitzvah and you're not enjoying it, you're not feeling it, so instead of you feel there's something blocking you, so it says the Maharal, reach deeper. Reach deeper. Reach deeper, believe and know that deep in your heart this is what you want to do. Deep in your heart, this is you. This is not just something that everyone else is doing. This is something that you and your heart really want to do. Just to dig deeper, because this is you. Who was the greatest sinner in history? One of the top 10 was a man named Menachem ben Chizkiah. He killed his grandfather, who was Isaiah, a great prophet. He gave his children to idolatry. He did a lot of terrible things. And he was one suffering deeply. And when he was suffering so deeply, he turned to God and he asked God to forgive him and to accept his tshuva. And the angels, the Talmud says, blocked his prayers. Don't let his prayers up there. And then what does God do? God, the Talmud says, dug a tunnel under the throne of glory and allowed his prayers to reach him. What's going on over here? It sounds like we don't believe, like God forbid, like other religions, that there are other forces out there besides God. We only believe in one being, period. Not just one superpower, one being, that the whole world is part of God's truth. So, what does it mean that God has to, if the angels are arguing with God, then send them back to school. I mean, God had dug a tunnel, he's trying to sneak behind the angels. What does this mean? This means like this. God did make a system of justice and fairness in the world. God did create a system of consequences. But that's only the way things are externally. Then there are God's children. Then there's the way God looks towards each of his children, and he says, the rules are rules, but you're my child. That's the meaning of God digging under his throne. Digging under his throne, making a tunnel under his throne means that there is the way things are according to the normal order, but for you, my child, reaching out to me, forget about the normal order. When you dig in the tunnel, it goes straight to the Bais Hamikdash. And that's the meaning of these three people and what they were doing. If you want to just give information to your students, you have the information. You don't have to visit Jerusalem. But the guy who's giving the lesson to his students wanted to give the lesson to his students from the Bais Hamikdash. He wanted to give something of light of Mashiach. He wanted something of the future to be in the present. He wanted to do something special. He was very conscious, very living with purpose. He was living with the vision of the future. He wanted to go to the Bais Hamikdash and bring the light of the Bais Hamikdash into his teachings. The guy lighting the candles in the synagogue, he light the candles in the synagogue and that's it. But he could light the candles in the synagogue like Chaim Dayani, full heart, full soul, the whole being immersed in it. He went to Bais Hamikdash. He wanted to go there to get the light of the Bais Hamikdash. And so too with the girls making the challah. They just want to put everything bagel spice in the challah, or chocolate chips, or raisins in the challah. They wanted to put something from the Bais Hamikdash in the challah, something from the Eibishter in the challah, something from they wanted to mean something, to do something. And so too, this Shabbos, Hashem gives us the chance to make a tunnel, to get in touch with our deepest self. And the truth is that every one of us sees a Bais Hamikdash, and the more you believe in it, the more you open up a channel to see that. The more you dig the tunnel straight to get to your Bais Hamikdash, to your Yerushalayim. And this vision of Hashem that Hashem gives us to see the third Bais Hamikdash, this allows us to live now, before Mashiach comes, with some of that future energy, some of that future light, as if it's here already. And to see that in ourselves, to realize in ourselves that we have it, and see it in other people, to realize that this is who we are, and to live with that. And if you don't find yourself excited about your mitzvahs, Dig deeper. The temple's there. There's a beautiful temple inside of you. It's a beautiful temple. There's a celebration already going on. So Hashem should help us all. We should get in touch with our inner vision of ourselves, our third Bais Hamikdash, and we should see it also in Baruch Neufeld. Hi Baruch. In each of us, seeing each other. And the main thing is we should celebrate with Mashiach Tzedekenu. Chaim Baruch. Thank you. Chaim Baruch. Any questions or comments? Okay. Chazak Baruch.
Yeah, I have a comment, question. When we